Test, test. There we go. Okay. Whew. Okay. So there's probably none of you that's going to be watching this live. Hello, welcome. The title is entirely accurate. I forgot to do laundry. So I'm doing laundry right now. I'm just letting the washer do its thing. In the meantime, I'm bored and I can't exactly go to sleep. But I'm worried that, oh my goodness, Shadower is here already. That's crazy. What is my opinion on Judith? Yo, what's my opinion on Gundam? Okay, I don't have an opinion on Gundam. My opinion on Gundam is, my opinion on Gundam is I want to watch Gundam, but I, but it's so long. There's so many. Okay, you know what? I just finished binge watching a show today. I basically wasted my Saturday. So, you know what? What I'm gonna do? What I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna try to watch a Gundam show next. That'll be a nice change of pace. So I just finished watching In the Land of Leodale, and it's this cute little cute little I guess it's an isekai where this woman who like is always on life support. She dies, but like she always played this virtual reality MMO. It basically Sword Art Online, but it's like if you were to go into Sword Art Online like months after you died. Um, and she just I don't know. It's just like a nice little wholesome fantasy slice of life isekai that's like barely an isekai. It doesn't have any of the annoying tropes. There's only really one episode that's like kind of horny. I seriously, it's so like out of the ordinary for that show that I started questioning like, dude, who wrote this episode? Gundam 00. Let me look that up. Gundam, is it 00 or 00? Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing here 2007 Mobile Suit Gundam 00. Okay, or 00. Gotcha. So I'm gonna try to open up Crunchyroll, see if I can add that because I've been wanting to get into Gundam, but man, it's like trying to get into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the modern day. Here we go, Mobile Suit Gundam 00. I added it to my watch list, but that's not what I came here to discuss. So I just want to talk about intellectual property law. So basically, if you guys don't know, and I need to be careful here on YouTube because there's a good chance that I don't know, some company uses some keyword search kind of thing, looks at the transcript of this stream and goes, "Oh, we're gonna strike this guy." So I need to be careful. But basically, I I am of the belief that intellectual property law. I can't speak. I am of the belief that intellectual property law isn't real. What do I mean? I mean that intellectual property law seems almost like made up morality. And it's kind of understandable. Like if you're an author, you want to make sure that you're able to make money off your book and you want to make sure that you can control the sale and distribution of your works. So I understand that. Where I take issue with it, you're going to hear my chocolate milk, my spoon clanking against my mug quite a bit. Where I take issue with intellectual property law is that it feels like a fiction of capitalism. And it's like, oh, here we go with the politics. No, no, okay. I'm not a capitalism hater. I'm not, kind of, maybe. Okay, maybe a little bit. But no, capitalism, it's whatever. It's a better system than communism, socialism, whatever. But one of the downsides of it, and Pope Leo the 13th knew that there were downsides with it. Um, one of the downsides of it is like everything is about money. And you're like, no, that's not true. And it's like, it kind of is though. Let me lower my microphone a little bit. That should be good. Found it peaking. Um, what's an example of what? Like everything being about money? Uh, I you could look at Nintendo right now with Power World. They're going after them for money. They don't care about enforcing their patents or making sure to protect their brand. They're going after Power World because Power World it was setting up a competing product that if put on store shelves would confuse parents and be like, "Is that a Pokemon with a gun?" And then they wouldn't want to buy Pokemon anymore. That's why Sony is working so closely with Power World, and that's why Nintendo saw that it was an issue. And really, both players are at fault. Like, Sony, who owns PlayStation, Sony knew that that would be the ramifications. Is this video about copyright? Kind of, basically, yeah. I just want to like sort of, I don't know, spit my thoughts about intellectual property law, because I've been talking a lot about it with my friends, and I kind of just want to like lay it all out there. Um, so that's what I'm kind of doing as I wait for my for my laundry to wash. Let me take a sip of this hot cocoa. I said hot cocoa. It's not really hot. I should have heated it up though. So my contention, because I know that a lot of arguments for copyright and I'm sorry, a lot of arguments against copyright and in favor of piracy, all of them boil down to basically like entitlement. It's like, oh well, the developer, the game is bad, so I'm not going to pay for it, or the developer did X or Y bad things, so they don't deserve my money, or the game is too expensive, so I deserve to get it for free. And it's like, I understand that not all of you or all of us or whatever make arguments like this, because when those are presented to me when I'm talking about intellectual property and piracy or whatever, it's frustrating because I feel like I'm being strawmanned. And so when I'll get to your comment in a second, Shadower. So when I see that intellectual property is, it doesn't have many, one could call them genuine good faith critics that know what they're talking about. I feel like I sort of have to step up for that. Um, because I really do think that intellectual property is one of those things where, sometimes you'll go through the course of history, and then you'll notice that after a certain point things start going downhill, things look really bad, and you get to the point where Nintendo is, suing Pal World over patent infringement because they have uh they have pals being thrown out of Pokeballs, and like that's the reason that they're suing them for millions and millions of dollars and forcing them to change their game and halt development. And you're thinking, that's ridiculous, how did we get to this point? And so you trace back through history, and some people go as far as saying the Mickey Mouse Act, the Protect Mickey Mouse or Save Mickey Mouse, whatever it's called. And I think, no, it actually goes back further to intellectual property law. Think about it. The church hasn't really decided on this. This is not morality that is justified through Christian means. And as I outline, as I laid out in a previous video that I did on intellectual property and how copyright law is not binding, if you retroactively apply um, intellectual property more as a moral standard, you condemn the creation of the Gospels, and I'm not comfortable with that. I see that Shadower left a comment here. If he, I agree with you, but I might sound bad, but I believe that all forms of art should go public domain a couple years after it comes out. You know what? I agree. I agree. I 100% agree. I think it's ridiculous that oop, that was a flicker of light. My power might go out. But I agree. I agree. It's like, maybe give it like, I don't know, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years even, I might not have a problem with when it comes to stuff like books, music, entertainment, TV shows, movies, characters, concepts. So I understand that, right? However, I would get that as a principle thing. I wouldn't understand it, or rather, I wouldn't prefer it as a moral standard. I understand why if you enacted laws like that, they would be just laws. As it stands right now, current copyright law cannot be considered just law because A, it's not it's barely enforced. So it can't even be considered a law that you're like bound to obey because like it is selectively enforced. There's like been one guy who went out of his way to piss off Nintendo, and then there was another guy, Doug Bowser, and he went out of his way to piss off Nintendo, and that's how he got taken down under copyright law. But aside from those two guys, like, can you name 50 men in the past 5 to 10 years that have gone to jail or have been fined or have been taken to court over something like piracy? I don't think you could. So it's selectively enforced, and beyond being selectively enforced, I don't think that it's just because it's at best it's overreaching. At best, it's too much. 70 years after the death of the author is ridiculous. I don't think that you can argue against that. Let me see here. So Shadow, where you said, in my opinion, I'm beginning to hate Nintendo to me because you have no right to sue someone just because they're making better games than you. That would be like me taking you to court because of your YouTube has more subs than me, and that's so true. I agree. That's basically like what's going on. It's a matter of you are costing us money, so we're gonna sue you, and we're gonna leverage this arbitrary copyright law system that we've set up over the course of the last few decades in order to ruin you and your business and your employees' lives. And I hate that. I hate that they ruined Doug Bowser's life for what. Let's be real. Any other generation before like the 1950s, look at the case of Doug Bowser. Doug Bowser, if you don't know, he was basically the face of a group that made like piracy devices for, I believe it was the 3DS or the Switch, I forget. And even though he was only really involved in like being the PR guy, the face of the group, he wasn't really the one doing all the things. Because he was the face of the group, they chose to make an example out of him, and they ruined his life. He has to pay money to Nintendo for the rest of his life out of every single paycheck of his. I don't know about you, but I think that every generation, like before the 1950s, would have looked at that and said, that's ridiculous. You ruined this man's life because of silly little computer games, because of your silly little electronic thingy that you hold in your hands and you charge at night. That's ridiculous. The punishment far, far exceeded the crime, to the point where one has to begin to wonder, is it even a crime at all? I think once you see the abuses that Nintendo gets away with Power World, with Doug Bowser, when you look at that, like objectively, you sort of zoom out. You stop looking at the trees in the forest. You stop looking at, here's the tree about copyright law number one, copyright law number two, and you zoom out and you look at the forest of intellectual property law, and you realize maybe this forest is corrupt. Maybe this forest has a disease spreading through it, or maybe the forest is just a bunch of weeds and they are a disease on the environment as a group. And I think that's what it is. So, like, why? Well, I think the idea of you being able to own ideas and expression of ideas that have not taken physical form is ridiculous. So, this would be stuff like a character. Who are you to tell me that you own the idea of Lucina? That's like saying that you own King Arthur. Are you kidding me? Are you insane? What do you mean you own King Arthur? Take another sip of this chocolate milk. Ah, that hits the spot. Who are you to say that you own King Arthur? Who are you to sorry, who are you to say that you own Romeo or Juliet as characters, as concepts? Seriously. Who are you to say that you own a song? I mean, seriously, like back in, I'm gonna refer to old times, general vague general old times, because I don't need to have like a super precise historical example. Like you all know this is the case. Back in ye olden days, how did music spread? How was music practiced? Well, it was typically passed down. Nobody after a bit really learned nobody like remembered who the author or like the guy who composed the song was. And this started changing when we got like major famous composers like Mozart, Bach, Beethoven. I'm sure that it went back beyond them as well, in further into history, but like it's still like a general like novel idea that you remember composers who compose like just common like general songs that people sing. For example, take pop music. That is our sort of folk music of the modern day. It's just that it's so much of a revolving door of songs. You get a song, it comes in for like a year and then it leaves and nobody thinks about it anymore. Um, and so in that way it's different than folk music, but it's basically like our folk music. And um how did folk music spread? Well, it wasn't licensed. I'll tell you that much. It wasn't licensed. It was, you would go to the pub or to the tavern, the inn, the town square. You would maybe go to church. and people would be singing it. Somebody learned it from somebody else, who learned it from somebody else, who learned it from somebody else, and sometimes maybe they would charge for their services of teaching you the song, but they certainly wouldn't require payment in order for like every time that you sang the song. Ain't that crazy? I remember, was it the case? Wasn't it like the Disney Channel show, Ant Farm? I don't know if you guys remember Ant Farm. You might be like too young or too old for this. I'm 23, so keep that in mind. But like when I was like significantly younger, when I was a kid, there was a show called Ant Farm. It had, I think her name is China Anne McClain as the main character, like the actress playing the main character, and that show, it had it was like a bunch of kid prodigies, whatever. Anyway, there was this episode where they sang a happy birthday song, but they didn't. I think it was this show. They didn't sing the actual happy birthday song. They sang some like original happy birthday song that wasn't like the actual one that everybody sings at actual birthday parties. And the reason for it is because they didn't want to pay the license. It's so ridiculous. They didn't want to pay the license in order to use that song in the show. So what did they do? They came up with their own song because they didn't want to pay the license for a song that is so common use that it is ubiquitous with singing somebody a happy birthday. It is ubiquitous with birthday parties. Everybody knows it, but some dude owns it. Oh hey John. So you look at an example like that and you contrast it with the past where like you didn't have to every time you did a public performance at like the town square or at some inn or some, tavern, you would play the song and they would pay you for your services, but certainly they wouldn't pay you for like intellectual property of like the song. You wouldn't have to pay the composer of the song. Half the time you didn't know who the composer was, every time that you played the song. So you understand how different it is there with music. I only know the Mickey Mouse copyright. Yeah, the Mickey Mouse copyright's pretty bad. You're telling me I can only use Steamboat Willie? Really? It's the same character. But Mickey Mouse is the reason we're in this mess. It's not, like I said before, it's not like the central reason. It's not even the first cog in the machine that sort of started this whole copyright mess. You need to go back way further back than Mickey Mouse. But Mickey Mouse is what sort of gets us to the acceleration of the evil of copyright law. It's what shows us that when developed, intellectual property is actually a bad thing, and that maybe we should focus more on the common distribution of goods, which includes art. I think everybody can sympathize with the idea that art shouldn't just be for those that can afford it, and maybe some luxurious, especially luxurious art, could be gate kept by money. Sure, maybe. Yeah, I could see an argument for that. Maybe art that's difficult to preserve or that otherwise requires some financial upkeep, such as old pieces that require security in case some angry protester wants to throw a can of soup at it, that sort of thing. I can understand charging money to be able to see that. Fine, but that's not an intellectual property thing. That's just like a that's just like a cost of doing things in the real world with real risks and risk mitigation thing. That's not an intellectual property thing. But the idea that art has to be gate kept for money, or that it can theoretically be gate kept for money. Somebody asked me, like, okay, um, a way to know whether or not piracy is okay is if it causes significant moral problems if universally applied. And I think everybody sort of understands the idea that piracy will never be like universally accepted as the main thing that people do in order to access media, because most people don't want to. Most people actually do want to support the shows in whatever way they think they can. All isekai is the same. So true. Let me take another sip. I love chocolate milk. Right. So piracy will never be like a universal thing that everybody does, but in order to judge whether or not it's good or not, that was redundant. I'm sorry. You have to like universally apply it in in a hypothetical in order to see like what comes of it. And I would say I would actually raise the challenge that if you universally apply the concept that you have to pay in order like that you can keep art behind money, that is equally bad. And so, not equally bad. I actually think that a future where everybody pirates might not be the worst thing in the world. especially because again, intellectual property is fairly new. So maybe it's not the case. And here's a big part of my sort of thesis, if you will. Maybe it's not the case that piracy in I'm sorry, maybe it's not the case that piracy disrupts an ordinary, an otherwise normal system. I'm not making this case very well. I'm sorry. I'm a fresh thinker in this field. I have nobody to look up to, so I have to come up with all this stuff myself. And sometimes I say things very stupidly. But here's like part of my thesis, and that is maybe the systems that rely on intellectual property law and its expressions and its application to function are illegitimate, and we set up a whole model of business that is illegitimate, and therefore piracy is not a moral problem, but rather it would sort of just reinforce the fact that you have an illegitimate business model that when you apply uh that when you apply like not even amoral or non-immoral, just I'm sorry, not even immoral, not amoral, like just straight up non-immoral um practices to it, like piracy, assuming that it's not immoral, that it falls. Maybe that's not the fault of like people who pirate. Maybe it's just that you set up a bad business model. Maybe going all digital was a mistake. Maybe going all intellectual property was a mistake. And that's a big part of my thesis, is that like intellectual property is fake and lame, and I can't say the next thing that I want to say. So you can guess what I mean when I say effeminate. Um, is it Abuelitas? Yeah, Abuelitas want to like support the shows. They'll get the cable package, whatever. They know how Netflix works. They just don't want to. They just don't want to use it. But yeah, this idea of like just imagine a world where everything was Netflix, where everything required an online subscription, always online, everything you had to continually pay for in order to function. And you could argue, well, okay, then maybe it's the case that subscriptions are the bad thing and not intellectual property. Okay, what about, I don't know. What about if everything was like a one-time purchase? Back in the day, you used to like download free mobile games and they say pay us $1. Now it's a subscription, but back then it was pay us $1. Yes, I would apply it to patents, but I think patents have a practical use. I'll get to those in a second. But it's like, pay us $1 to get rid of the ads. Well, it's like, what if everything was like pay $1, pay $2, pay $5, pay $10? Everything, every single little thing of every piece of art was gate kept by money. Do you think that would be a just system? Do you think that that would be a just society? I think not. So just as like you would want to maybe apply the concept of piracy universally in a hypothetical and see if it leads to any great moral failings, I would likewise challenge the pro intellectual property people to look at themselves. And it's like, well, maybe the issue is the money. Okay, but like intellectual property entails that you can sell usage or license usage of that property. So they're not like as indistinguishable from each other as say like intellectual property and subscription services. But generally the idea of money is always going to be tied with intellectual property for as long as currency is a concept, which it has been for like forever. And so imagine you just like universally apply the concept of copy of intellectual property, right? Where everything is subject to copyright purchases, like copyrighted purchases or licensing. Like, what then? Would that not be gatekeeping art from people who can't afford it? I think so. And maybe that's not the right way to do things. So as for patents, I said I would get to patents. Here it is. I haven't thought terribly much about patents, but I think at least patents serve a practical function. They protect innovation. They last for way too long, though. I would say no more than 5 years is justified for the purpose of protecting innovation. For example, if you wanted to patent like large language models, whoever it is that came up with like the finalized model or the finalized mode of large language models, I understand that large language models were built on a foundation of shared research, but like if you wanted to patent ChatGPT, for example, because it was like the first sort of major large language model. There was a previous one before it, but I think it was also made by OpenAI. I could be mistaken about that though. But imagine if you were to pirate like the first large language models, then it would only take like 5 years for everybody to be able to finally make their own large language model according to that design. And I think that's actually better. It's better for competition, and it's also better for the consumer because it means that it's not just one company for like forever holding a monopoly on this thing. Everything like Netflix, I wouldn't want that on my worst enemy. So true, King. That's so true. Imagine everything being like you don't even have to imagine, dude. They're gatekeeping printers and seat heating now. some cars, they're luxury cars, granted, but some cars that you pay like a bunch of money for. Cars are incredibly expensive these days. You have to basically get a mortgage for a car. Okay, um, and like they're charging they're charging you like a subscription to use like heating your seats, like making your seats slightly warmer. Oh my goodness, it's ridiculous. So imagine that, but like to everything, right? Printers, if you want to print, even though you bought the paper, you bought the ink, you pay for the electricity, you bought the you bought the ink part cartridge, you want everything for the printer to work, but no, you need to pay an online subscription. You need to pay a $3 a month subscription in order to be able to use this machine that would otherwise work just fine. That seriously, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And but this is protected under intellectual property. Like what happens? What is the terms of service of that printer entail? Well, it entails that they're allowed to do that, and that this is protected under some variation of intellectual property. That may be trademark, that may be a patent, that may be copyright, and that may be what was the last one? I forgot what the last one was. But yeah, you could like protect it like that stuff is protected under intellectual property law in some way, shape, or form. So maybe consider that intellectual property law might not be a good thing. I don't know why, but the name Ant Farm reminds me of the book called Animal Farm. I think they actually made a reference to Animal Farm in Ant Farm in one episode, which was like a little meta sort of thing. It was kind of cool. Anyway, so intellectual property. Yeah, I just the idea that you can own idea because like what is okay. Let me present an example. Let's say let's take like Jujutsu Kaisen season 2, the Shibuya arc. You got the Sukuna versus Maharaga fight. Sukuna versus Maharaga. What is that? It's an animation. Like just take like the idea of somebody. I'll get to your question in a second, Chaos, because I really want to make this point real quick. It might not be quick. We'll see. But let's say that you take like this from start to finish. You like screen record or you otherwise rip the Sukuna versus Maharaga fight, and you turn it into Sukuna versus Maharaga.mp4. Let's just call it SM.mp4 for short. SVM. You know, Sukuna versus Maharaga. SVM.mp4. Well, SVM.mp4, what is that? Well, it's an animation. What is an animation? It's an expression of an idea. Okay. Why do you think that somebody is allowed to own that? Because somebody owns that, right? Somebody owns that. And the somebody in this case would be the publisher. So it's like who commissioned Studio Mappa? Who commissioned Studio Mappa in order to make that for them? That's who we're talking about, right? Jujutsu Kaisen is an intellectual property. What does that mean? It's an idea. That's what it means. It's like they don't tell it to you this way because otherwise you'd be like, "Oh, that's stupid. You can own an idea." No, that's actually what it is. Jujutsu Kaisen is an intellectual property explicitly. That's what we call every new series. Every like Naruto is an intellectual property. You know, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is an IP. Dragon Ball is an IP. My Babysitter's a Vampire from Disney, the Disney Channel is an IP. And so Sukuna, SVM.mp4 is a video recording of several drawings being played at several intervals per second in order to generate the illusion that the objects on screen are that the objects depicted are moving. So what is Sukuna versus Maharaga? What is SVM.mp4? It is a video recording of drawings being shown one after the other. What are drawings? They are expressions of, you guessed it, an idea. And who is to say that you own that? Why is it a problem? Here's the main sort of argument. I think Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity loves to say questions aren't arguments, but they certainly can try to poke holes in other people's arguments or other people's ideologies. So here's my question, right? And I am actively questioning the legitimacy of the system. My question is, how is me using my computer to make a copy by hitting Control V, Control C of svm.mp4 any more morally reprehensible than someone making a fan translation? I'm sorry, a fan animation. What makes that more morally reprehensible than somebody making a fan animation? And you would say it's because the fan animation is original or because it took actual effort to make, but that we're not talking about whether or not it takes effort to make. I think you would be correct. I think anyone would be correct in saying that the question of whether or not making a copy of something is moral or moral or immoral does not is not predicated on whether or not it was easy or difficult to do. Just because me pressing Control V and Control C and letting my computer take care of all the automated processes in order to make this copy, just because that's how I went about it, doesn't mean that it's any more morally reprehensible, or that the latter, which I'm going to get to, is more morally acceptable than the former. The latter being me painstakingly hand drawing an exact replica of it. Seriously, like, is it really immoral for somebody, so long as he isn't lying and claiming that it's the original, is it really immoral for somebody to go into a museum, look at the Mona Lisa, leave, and then make his own replica of the Mona Lisa? And would you condemn him even if that's going to be for personal use, just to hang in his house because he likes the image? So that's my question. How is If you really think that just like making a copy of something and sending it to another person, that constitutes some sort of moral violation, how could you say that fan animations are any different? How could you say that fan animations are more morally acceptable than me pressing Control V and Control C? I'm sorry, Control C and Control V on my keyboard in order to make a copy to send to a friend. So that's an example. Sukuna versus Maharaga. Now let me get to chat because you guys have been talking quite a bit. Actually, I'm pretty happy about that. Let me check chat. So, I had heated seats on this rental car once. It was really good on November Chills. I can imagine. Yeah, and now you have to pay a monthly subscription to access them. And because the car isn't cheap, I'd imagine that the subscription rate isn't cheap either. So, let's see. We've got uh paying subscriptions so that you can use stuff you already paid for should be considered theft. It probably is. I think it actually is, but it's protected under copyright, under intellectual property law. Sorry, not copyright. Since we're talking about copyright, I'm going to talk about a horror series I know you hate, but you may see the reason why we have not had any new Jason movies. It's because of copyright now. Because we have two Jasons, and people are arguing, and by people I mean the owners, that they're like in their 80s over a oh, the owners in their 80s. That's crazy. They're in a legal battle over a supernatural zombie in a hockey mask, because they're literally having a battle over a knockoff of a knockoff. Yeah, okay. That's exactly it. That's exactly it, dude. Like, you see how absurd this is, and all of this is under copyright. Under intellectual property, and it's not to say that you can't have actual legitimate moral issues or moral disputes over stuff that is otherwise silly. Like, if I steal a lollipop from the candy store, then that's theft, and you can argue about it day and night with somebody that thinks that that isn't theft. But at the end of the day, that's a serious moral consideration whether or not something is theft, right? Even if it's a silly example to use as a battleground. But at the same time, you do want to look at examples and actually address, like, is the battleground, is the concept, regardless of the battleground chosen, legitimate or not, or is this like actually like a silly concept even if they're using a silly battleground on top of it? So let's see. Chaos said, spoiler from a 400-year-old book. No, I haven't read Don Quixote. Stealing a lollipop, you monster. Okay, bro. Okay, look. I would never. That's not true. I am obliged to say, as a practicing Catholic, I would never steal a lollipop. But I'd be lying if sometimes when I look at the price of some chocolate that looks really delicious at the gas station, I would be lying if I didn't at least have the temptation to take it with me. Let's see. So, Chaos says, Cervantes had to kill Don Quixote because some dishonest writers tried to steal his idea of theirs. What could Cervantes do? Just curious. So Don Quixote is actually like a pretty good example. I don't know what happens in the book, but if he actually did kill him, if Cervantes actually did kill Don Quixote, that I don't know, that seems like a good solution, rather than telling the other writers, no, you can't write fan fiction. And another thing, right? I understand that the intellectual property exists, and copyright as an expression of intellectual property exists in part to make sure that what those writers try to do can't be done. I just think it's the wrong solution. I think it's the wrong solution, and it's made up morality. What they should be held accountable for is trying to pass off an illegitimate version of the story or an illegitimate continuation as legitimate. But the way to do that isn't with intellectual property law. And the reason I know this is because Rings of Power exists. Rings of Power existing should disprove that intellectual property is the solution for people trying to pass off fake works as legitimate. Because in no world could you consider Rings of Power a legitimate, not continuation, I guess it's a prequel, a legitimate extension of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings story. You can't consider it a legitimate work according to the I guess the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien. However, because of because of intellectual property and how these rights work, it is considered legitimate, and people just look at that and say, "Oh, that's unfortunate. That sucks." Same thing with Star Wars, the sequel trilogy. I'm not gonna bash the sequel trilogy too bad because I didn't watch it. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but it's a general pop culture thing that you're probably aware of to some degree or another. Nobody liked the not nobody. Okay, a good chunk of people did not like the sequel trilogy, and one would I think maybe they had justification to look at that and say this is not a legitimate continuation of episode 6 or from episode 6. And so because did I use the number right? I hope I did. And so but intellectual property law and intellectual property morality and the intellectual property framework, the paradigm, insists that it is legitimate because they had the quote unquote right to add to that universe, even if the original creator, in this case it would be George Lucas, would not have signed off on that. Same thing with Cervantes not signing off with those other guys who try to make a different Don Quixote. Let's see. Shadower says, "You never know. He probably needs the lollipop more than one person who had it." That's so true. That's so true. I deserve the lollipop more than like the 5-year-old who's just gonna whine and want to get another one next week. You know. You're the best Christian that I have ever listened to. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I I thank you. I'm flattered, but I don't deserve that. There's way better Christians that you could be listening to. um I feel it's a sad thing actually. Like I feel sad about this, that like no one else sort of talks about intellectual property in this way. And like from a Christian perspective, I have this idea, I've floated it a couple of times. I kind of want to do like a 2-hour anti intellectual property dissertation, but I don't know if my audience, like, you know, sort of like the small but loyal fan base that I've cultivated here, would be interested in that, especially because they came here for anime stuff. um I don't know if they would be interested in that. And I don't know if they'd be interested in like super long videos like that. But also, I don't know if that would work with YouTube guidelines. Um, so you know, like I really want to like address this in a more thorough way now, kind of like what I'm doing right now. This is part of the process. Just as that first video that's rough and it's full of ideas that maybe I wouldn't necessarily express in that same way now. Like it's also part of the process of me sort of trying to figure out like a moral framework that excludes intellectual property and that decries it as illegitimate. And I want to do that, and this is part of the process. I just don't think that I'm ready to do that in like a 2-hour dissertation kind of video because I haven't really expressed everything as I want to, and I haven't thought about these things enough. um and I don't know if you guys would want it, and I know maybe you guys that are listening to me about talk about this now might want it, but like you know, like there's more people in the audience than just you guys, and I'm grateful for you guys being here. I just don't know that there's enough of you that to make that video a worthwhile endeavor. Maybe in the future it will be. Who knows? I really want to do it though. Okay, so just so you guys know, the next video that we're gonna be doing on the channel, I have to work on it basically from scratch starting tomorrow, and it's gonna release on Monday. So I have legit one day to work on this because I work on Monday. But I'm gonna try to get it done, and a it's going to be about Zenshu. I don't know if you guys have watched Zenshu. Zenshu is this like nice. I realize I'm like talking and like hitting my desk a lot. I hope that that's not coming through the mic too much. But Zenshu is like this nice little original animation by Mappa, and it's like I think 13 episodes, and it's just really really enjoyable. It's this nice story about um changing. It's sort of like changing things through creativity, but also about and you guys might cringe at this, but it's about the power of love, but in a real way, in like a genuine, actual way, not like the sort of thing is like, oh, uh, they loved each other, therefore this guy who died is like back from the dead. Like what? No, no. Well, kind of, but no. Um, no, it's like actually like it's a proper expression of the idea that love always wins, and I think it's really cool. So you guys should definitely watch it, because we're gonna be talking about how Zenshu teaches Christian love, on Monday's episode. I'm really happy to be able to talk about that show. I watched it twice. I watched it the first time when it was yeah, I binged it like the first time when I was watching it as it was airing. Not really. Like I watched it like before, like right before the last episode aired, and then I sort of like watched it the next week to watch the finale. And then, like a week later, I invited my best friend over, and we binged the entire show in one sitting. It was really cool. So yeah, that's gonna be the next episode. I was supposed to be smiling through that. Whatever. Let me read the comments. So when it comes to copyright too, I just like the copyright could take 70 years before we can ever actually use it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous time frame. Are you seriously telling me that if I am born the year that, like, I don't know, G.K. Chesterton dies, I have to wait until I'm 71 in order to be able to access the writings of a dead man who's been dead for 70 years for free? Really? Why? Does that not sound ridiculous on its face to you? And if it doesn't, can you explain to me why? Let's see, Shadower says, what I find funny is there are a lot of movies are based on fairy tales and urban legends and creepypasta sayings that only got famous because they were passed down and added to again. Exactly. Same thing with a lot of music and poetry. We don't have the original copy of Homer's Odyssey. We don't. Or the Iliad. The oldest copy that we have is from like 400 years after it was written. And I'm not saying that it necessarily like, oh, survived through oral tradition before somebody finally wrote it down. That's the same sort of mythicism that they use against the Bible. So like, no, I'm not going to say that. But like, it's undeniable that for the majority of human history, the way that written works came to be memorized or remembered by people wasn't because they were preserved on paper. Most people couldn't read, and the amount that people couldn't read is sometimes exaggerated again as an attempt to use as a mythicist argument against the Bible. But it is the case that even if it's like 30%, that's still the minority. So like most people, like I'm sorry, even if it's like 30% could read, that's still the minority. Like most people couldn't read. So a lot of this stuff came to be understood by memory, by art, by the common distribution of goods, including art. That's why when you walk into a church, the art there is for everyone. It's not owned by the church. It's there for everyone. The church is the custodian. The church keeps watch over it. It doesn't treat it like property, but as a thing to to look after and to watch over and to protect and maintain. And so that when you walk into a church with beautiful stained glass, what you're looking at isn't property. It's catechesis in art. You're looking at art. You're looking at culture, and it's free for you to access. And that was very good to have because back then when people couldn't read, that's how you taught people stories. You look at a mosaic of the baptism of our Lord, and you would explain the story to somebody because they couldn't read the New Testament to see that the Lord was baptized by John the Baptist. But the people who could read, they used those paintings to explain it to people who couldn't. Let's see this. Um, we need more Catholic creators like you. Most of them are into apologetics. Nothing against that, but it's disproportionate. Well, okay, actually, okay, I actually, oh man, you have activated my trap card. Okay, I'm gonna curb what I want to say about that into a very small chunk, but I have so much to say about that. Um, I went on this podcast. I don't know if the episode is out yet. Um, I went on this podcast with a friend of mine, AJ, and I think it's called. I should know what podcast I'm appearing on. My bad. Let me look it up. Oh, come on. It, okay, it's called Beyond the Headlines with AJ. And she had me on for an interview. I don't know when the interview is going to come out live, but I addressed this because I was asked, like, what is like one piece of advice that you would give to up and coming Catholic YouTubers, and I would say it's this: like, be unique, like, stop it with the 50,000 lay apologetics channels, please. That is like so oversaturated. Nobody wants another apologetics channel from like a moderately well learned layperson, man. Come on. No, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Like, okay, maybe like one or two people want it, but they don't actually, right? They're just kind of, maybe they're just tired of Catholic Answers. Maybe they're tired of Christian Wagner. Who knows? But like, they don't actually want me in an apologetics channel. Why not? Why not me? And when I say me, I don't just mean like me. I mean like the people like me, because like, oh, you're so, you're so well spoken or whatever, or you talk about things that are interesting. That's cool. But if you caught me doing apologetics, I did like a Twitter space on apologetics, and I had to do so much research for that. And it's like, people who can dedicate themselves to reading and reading and reading and reading and reading, that's fine. Like, they're there is use for them, and God bless them. But like, we don't need 50,000 apologetics channels run by like somewhat moderately well learned lay people, when we have apologetics channels already being being run by people who are qualified. I think Michael Lofton from Reason and Theology got his doctorates, and that's great. And Trent Horn, I think he's got like a master's in bioethics, and like, so let them do the talking. Joe Heschmeyer went to seminary because he was going to become a priest, but I don't need to do that. That's not me, and I think that's not a lot of us. We want to get into apologetics because it's easy and it's saturated, and it's you just sort of have to make the same arguments over and over and over again, because apologetics is very repetitive. Because every time that you make a video about some argument that maybe somebody who's into the stuff has heard like 7 times, there's going to be many people who have not heard that argument, and so you need to make it beginner friendly. That means that it's also like really repetitive, and it's really boring, and it's really draining. I could never get into that. I could never do that. Maybe I'll make like one or two apologetics channels. I made a video. My latest video right now is the one where I address Trent Horn on like matters of internet anonymity. And but it's like, that's an apologetics video maybe, but it's like, I'm not being an apologetic for Christianity. I'm not being an apologist for Christianity in that one. I'm being an apologist for anonymous online Christians. Either way, like, I don't like the idea of just like wasting so many beautiful and talented people's time, having them make more apologetics content that's just like the same thing over and over. So like, be unique. My friend that I featured on that anti Trent Horn video, Sanguine Ami, he's a Twitch streamer, and he's on hiatus right now. He's gonna return pretty soon, but he does that. He does streaming, he does music covers, and he talks about his faith. His whole thing is that he likes to learn more things about the faith. And he's also like really into VTubing, and he wants to be in that space, but also he's young and he can't afford to like not be anonymous, and he certainly couldn't afford to be a Catholic apologist, because like, he's so underqualified for that. So am I. So I'm tired of the apologetics channels. I'm tired of the same old arguments being presented back and forth and back and forth. That there is a place for that. The people who are doing it should continue doing it for the most part, but we don't need more of that. We need more streamers. We need more YouTubers. We need more musical artists. We need more playwrights, painters, visual artists, graphic designers. We need those people, right? We need people, as Trent Horn himself said, like making art. And so don't become a content creator, become an artist. That's what he said. And that's what I want to do. I'm doing my part. And I want to continue doing my part. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes I fail. Like again, I said like the video comes out in 2 days and I haven't worked on it. I have to do everything tomorrow. But I'm trying to do my part, and I hope more people do this as well, because I would love to have a YouTube space, a community where we're just like talking about anime, talking about whatever, and we're enjoying ourselves, and we're all Christians, we're all Catholics, you know. I mean, they don't have to all be Catholics, you know, like, but we're all Christians, we're all brothers in the Lord, and we just sort of get to talk about the things we like without having to like make a why Protestantism is wrong for the fifth time in a month. Oh my goodness. I'm so tired of that, bro. Oh my goodness. I'm taking another sip of chocolate milk. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Dude, I saw a Hatsune Miku mod. This is so random. I saw a Hatsune Miku mod for like Fire Emblem Awakening. And it just adds Hatsune Miku into the game as a character. And I thought that was really funny. Um let me see something. The closest thing we have is CDD. I love you, CDD. Yeah, CDD is awesome. I love CDD. Well, I'm an admin on CDD. Of course, I love CDD. It's such a wonderful community. And yeah, we have our critics. Yeah, we might not be like the most anti-establishment, you know, stand up for all the right things kind of group, because we have to protect our space online, and that means picking our battles. That means choosing our battles, and that means choosing when to submit to the otherwise corrupt authorities. But I love the community. I really do. The chunky milk is strong with me. Got a problem with that? You want a cup? I can give you a cup. I think I'm almost out of milk. I'm saving the I'm saving the rest of that for tomorrow morning. Oh, waking up from S tomorrow is going to suck. It is 2:30 in the morning here. Oh my goodness. Anyway, you know, I love CDD, and like that's a Discord server. And that's good. It's a good Discord server, but we need more stuff in the public internet, which is why I'm really supportive of people like Sanguinami, Juniperwood, Halcyon Ward, Zerktron. These guys are awesome because they are obviously and outspokenly Christian, unapologetically Christian, and they are going into these spaces and they're just making stuff. They're just doing things. You know, Junie's got that group, Viangeli. Ami is trying to do several collabs with people and they're going pretty well. I've got one that I'm doing with somebody else that I cannot specify. I just did one actually recently on the Anime Relatable channel. Y'all should really check that one out. That was really fun to make. Um, and so like I support these people, and I want more of that. I want more of them, more people like them, because they're awesome. And sometimes we lose one or two, you know, like I think it was Gabriel got goodness, I can't say his name, sorry. Gabriel Grazia, like that guy, he's awesome, but he had to go on hiatus for life reasons, and that sucks. But you know, it is what it is. So sometimes we lose one of the good ones, and it's rare that we see them not replaced, but it's rare that we see people sort of take up their roles, because there is so few of those. There are so few of us. Let's see here. So I found this one person in a comment section that called public domain evil, and that art should belong to the person who made it and his family and his bloodline forever. What? What? But I heard, but when I heard this, I was thinking, if we found someone who has Moses's blood, does that mean that he would own the Old Testament? Lol, I hope not. Yeah, dude, that's so true. And that's exactly it, Shadower. You raised the exact objection that I did in my first copyright video, which is like, if we retroactively apply, that's a good one actually. I'm gonna use that one. If we retroactively applied intellectual property law, then does that mean that Moses and his bloodline and his descendants or maybe at least like the most generous argument you would give to somebody who defends like the modern copyright system, you would say, really, nobody would have been allowed to make a copy of Moses's of the scrolls of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible, until 70 years after Moses died. Really? Come on. If you wouldn't defend it then, why on earth do you defend it now? That's my question. Yeah, that doesn't sound right at all. I mean, I'd like to make stories one day, but I don't think my family should have it forever. And I agree. I've got a little light novel that I want to work on. I've been planning it. Sitting down and writing it is probably going to take a while for me to start on, but I really want to make it, and I understand that under my perspective, I'm willing to bite the bullet. Under my perspective, anyone would be able to get a copy for free, and that's fine. I don't plan to be an author by trade, especially because, and here's the thing, back in the day, I told you we were going to do this. Back in the day, the way that you wrote books was that somebody commissioned you to write the book, or you wrote it for public use. Somebody paid you to do it. Somebody paid you for the time that you spent on the book, and then you made the book. Or maybe you made the book under contract that they would pay you afterwards. But either way, there was a patron and the patronized, right? There was a patron who commissioned the artist. And that's how the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts got made. Theophilus was the patron. Theophilus, the patron, was the one that paid Luke in order to make the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts, to subsidize the creation of those very expensive to make books. So this idea that like this idea that like you should be an author for trade and sell your book to like everyone else, and that if somebody pirates it, there's a problem with that. I think that just sort of ignores the proper way of doing business that we had before. So yeah, and I understand that under this system, if I were to copyright strike somebody for re-uploading one of my videos, I would be a hypocrite. I would be a hypocrite. Absolutely, I would be a hypocrite. Why wouldn't I be a hypocrite? If somebody puts up an exact replica of this stream on their channel, so long as they specify that it's a re-upload, in other words, like they're not allowed to lie and say that they are the ones who produce that content, right? That's different. If they say like, oh, this is an original stream of mine, or this is a stream that I did, or they just don't specify that it's like not them, then I could like use the copyright system in order to take down a liar. But that's exactly what it would be. It would be a liar. I would be taking down a liar. I'll be enforcing the goodness of truth and justice against the immorality of lying. But that's different from, say, somebody re-uploading my video saying this is a Piercing Heaven re-upload. Under my morality, I understand that I would have to allow that. Under this framework that I'm laying out, where intellectual property doesn't exist, I understand that if somebody were to do that, I would be obligated to let the video stay up. That if I copyright struck them, that I would be a hypocrite, and I'm willing to bite that bullet. But I don't think that the pro intellectual property folks are interested in biting the bullets that I have presented in the stream and that I could present in some other future elaboration of this topic. I don't think that they're willing to bite those bullets, and I think that even they would agree that intellectual property law as it exists today is way too much. Even if they think that intellectual property as a thing is real and that it should be legislated or whatever, I think everyone sort of understands that the way that it is now is totally absurd. Yeah, sorry guys, you can't share this wonderful book from our Lord until almost 100 years have passed since Moses has died. It's only been 73 years, so yeah. But that's exactly it, bro. Oh my goodness, bro. That's so real. I'm out of chocolate milk. I need to drink water now. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Because we're coming up on like the 1 hour mark. I don't know. Is there anything you want to ask about this topic? Any questions you might have about this topic before I end this? Because I really do love talking about this. You have to sacrifice to make a point, and I respect that. Some would never do that. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, you have to do it. You have to be consistent. Like you can't just be like, oh, the rules apply to everyone else. I've come up with this moral paradigm, this framework. Um, but then like for personal reasons I can't do it. It's the same thing as people who are like, no, piracy's bad, but I'm broke, so I'm gonna pirate this game. It's like that you're being a hypocrite. You are. Like, there's no other way to explain that. Oh man. Oh man. All right, again. Well, if there's no more questions, then I think this is where I'm gonna end. Oh, actually, hold on. I hope you do another live stream on AI stories and art because I found a good series made by a guy. He was not a good artist, but he was a good storyteller. So he used AI to tell it, and it was called. Let's see what it was called. So I'm interested. I put up a tweet the other day. I can probably bring it up in a screenshot. Not I think it was today actually. Hold on. I put up a tweet today about that. It's my latest tweet. It's my latest tweet. Let me take a screenshot of this. Save as, download, whatever. Let me insert it as an image here on the OBS thing. Um, Screen, and it's gonna be downloads screenshot. Here we go. So it's this thing. Where do I put this? Whatever. It's called Angel Engine. Okay, cool. Well, here, just so I'm being like transparent here. This is what I posted on Twitter like 9 hours ago. And it's like if you routinely use AI generated imagery or art as art or as memes, I'm muting you. Not because it's stealing art, not because it's ugly. Like again, I want more principled reasons. I want more. I want a paradigm. I don't want justifications. I want a paradigm, and that's if hold on. If you take nothing away from this stream except this, then I am content. And that is, I don't want justifications. When I am against intellectual property, I don't want to insert justifications in order to say that I'm against intellectual property. I don't want justifications. I want a paradigm. And I want that to be abundantly clear. I don't want to say I pirated this game because I couldn't afford it. I pirated this game because I'm entitled to it. Well, the developer did this. Well, the artist did that. I'm allowed to repost art because X. I'm allowed to pirate games because Y. I'm allowed to stream music for free for because Z. Like no, 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 no. I don't want justifications. I want a paradigm, and that's a very important thing. So yeah, let me can I undo? But I can't. Sweet. Yeah. So, but like, yeah. If you like, I said that I was gonna mute people who use AI as like art or memes, and it's not because it's stealing art or not because it's ugly. Those are justifications. It's because it's a mindless. It's a. I'm sorry, not mindless. It's a soulless exercise of creative sloth, which buries the imago Dei, the image of God, in favor of machine precision, the very act of dehumanization. So that's what I said. And well, I don't want to remove background. I want to remove the screenshot. There we go. And so the reason I said that is because like I'm tired of seeing it. I really am. I'm tired of seeing like these accounts, these super mega trad accounts, and they're the first ones to employ the newest technology, the AI thing, in order to like make their stupid garbage beige tinted memes, and it's really frustrating, and it just comes off as creative sloth. There's so many good Catholic paintings and images and things that you could use, or you could just draw stick figures for crying out loud. It's funny. I've done it. I put it in my Boruto video. I just drew the scenarios with stick figures, and I called it a day because that's what I was able to do. I'm not a talented artist in that sense. But it's really frustrating seeing those because like it's slop. It's creatively bankrupt, soulless slop. And it deprives people of seeing what would otherwise have been uh, expressions of creativity brought forth from our status as being made in the image of the creator. So yeah. Did that person unblock you on Twitter? No, Puella? No, Puella. No, Puella still has me blocked. I'm at kilometers per second. I'm Puella still has me blocked. I'm so upset, bro. Yeah, I told her, she's like, oh, if you say that piracy is a sin, I'm blocking you. And so I said, because back then I believed that piracy was a sin. So I said piracy is a sin, and she blocked me, mess around and find out, I guess. But that was forever ago, and I changed my mind now, and and she still hasn't unblocked me. I need somebody to like message her on Twitter, like, hey, could you unblock this guy? Yeah, I'll check Angel Engine. I'll see if that changes my mind or makes me think about things a little deeper. But yeah. So I guess, man, I was not expecting to laugh that hard. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end it here. It's been over an hour. I think my laundry is done washed. I could toss it in the dryer and then pick it up in the morning. So thank you guys for sticking around and just sort of chatting with me. This was really fun. I love engaging with you guys. And hopefully I'll be able to put out that video by tomorrow. So goodbye. I'm sorry, not tomorrow. Sorry. Get that video done by tomorrow. Um, Upload it by Monday. So goodbye. God bless you, and I hope you have a blessed night. And go to church tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Lord's Day, so go to church. God bless you all. Bye bye.